All right. Hello, everybody. Hope you all are doing well. This is DFS Army's NBA pre-lock show, where I'm here to answer your questions, but, also go game by game and talk through guys that I like, guys that I might not like as much. And, I'm running a little bit late today, but one thing that I'm trying to do more of this year is just not rush and just kind of take things at my own pace. Not going to lie, sometimes I let y'all rush me a little bit, and maybe it's still me just rushing myself, but I always do better when I just kind of go with the flow and not overthink or overstress, that kind of thing. So let's see. Good to see you, Cujo, JM. Good to see y'all in here. And yeah, going from NFL straight to NBA. I can't wait for the playoffs. My favorite time of year for NFL and NBA. Agreed. OG, good to see you, man. Mo, good to see y'all in here. And yeah, you can talk to a manager, Tyrell. I don't care. Harlock said, I love how all these players get an illness on game day. Either the NBA has rampant COVID going around or it's code for rest. It is literally 100% sure, no doubt in my mind, just another code word for rest. Everyone has an illness now. But all right, y'all. Let's jump into this slate. We have an interesting one. For those of you who are DFS Army members, I'm not doing the leverage cheat sheet today. That is madness. But I have some leverage plays I'll still touch on for the show still too. So yeah, first game on the slate. We have the Suns going up against the Hornets. I feel like I haven't done this in a while. I'm out of practice. For the Suns, at least solo, I think that's it. I've been doing quite a few shows with Brandon here lately. But for the Suns going up against the Hornets, no real injury news. Royce O'Neal is out. That doesn't really matter too much here at this point. And so this is a low total game. Not a game that I'm trying to get too much exposure to. Total's 225. It's actually a relatively high total game for this slate. But the two games that we're really looking to target here are the Hornets Jazz game and the Celtics Nuggets game. The rest are just fillers. And so for me, the only change I did to the optimizer is I put a 5% min on Kevin Durant. Price tag 9,400, not bad. He's shown he still has 50 plus, 60 plus upside, even with Devin Booker playing. But it's really hard to make a case here for any of these guys outside of just the soft matchup. It's really just the matchup that made me want to take that 5% shot on Kevin Durant. But the price tag's right. Everyone's basically healthy. There's no one that you're really looking at too much here for the Suns. And then when we look at my exposures, guys who are showing up, literally no one besides Kevin Durant, which I'm going to be fine with. I always like picking on the Hornets. I like seeing them show up on slates, but the Suns are like the opposite of that. Next up, we have the Hornets going up against the Suns. And for the Hornets, once again, no real injury news here. Nothing new that's worth talking about. If anything, it's just that these guys are healthier relatively than they've been in a while. Guys like LaMelo, Miller, Bridges, at this point, I either like to play in super soft matchups or when there's an injury of some sort. At this point, that's not the case, and so I'm not looking to play them. And then when we look at guys who are showing up for me exposure-wise, literally, you're not seeing any of the Hornets show up. You can make a case, a small case, for LaMelo Ball just because it is the game with the third highest total on the slate. Maybe a small case for Mark Williams. I don't like this spot for him, to be honest. But those are the only other two guys I would maybe consider. But clearly I'm not playing. Let's see. Okay, no one had anything bad to say about that. I'll take it. Darius said, it's time to bring our pockets to the promised land. Let's make it happen, man. Yeah, let's go as fast as slow-mo goes. I still can't believe he's still in the NBA. Good old Kyle Anderson. JM said, Nurk, bigs against the Hornets. I know, it's weird. Typically, I do play a big going up against the Hornets. Yeah, you caught me red-handed. But not today. The matchup's great. You're right. The Hornets are still giving up a ton of points to the bigs. The tough part with Nurk is just that he only played 14 minutes last time out. He was out for 3 games before that. In the game before he was out, he only played 13 minutes. And his minutes have just been all over the place this season. He hasn't been consistent. I can't trust him. He's not a bad dart throw on a 7-game slate, but I can't do it. You know, I like a lot of bigs on this slate too, so I can't stress it. B-Dubs, what's up, man? Yeah, exactly. Minutes aren't safe. He's coming off the bench now. It's sad. I want to do it in my soul. It sounds and feels right, but it's no longer right. There's a few spots like that on this slate. Anyway, I don't like the first game as much as I wish I did. Long story short. Next up, we have the Rockets going up against the Wizards. This is a game I like more than I thought I would. Let's see. Yeah, Suns blowing up the roster. Bradley Beal has been dog shit here lately. Like, it's hard to get excited about that situation. Let's see. All right. Next up for the Rockets. As you can tell, I like this team a good bit. Everyone will like this team a lot. You can pick on the Wizards. That's something we've been able to do for ages now, and we will continue to do that. But from an injury news standpoint, they do have some injuries. Jalen Green is questionable. That's the really big piece of news that we're still waiting for. Jabari Smith is already out. That's why Amen Thompson has been seeing the run he's been seeing because of that. And so Fred VanVleet, guys like Jalen Green, honestly, everybody. The matchup against Washington is one that we look to target. Fred VanVleet is my favorite sneaky play on the slate. If I was doing a leverage play sheet, he would be on there without a doubt. The thing that makes me a little worried, not about the play, but about him actually being a leverage play, is if we get the news that Jalen Green is out. This is one of the first games on the slate. We'll get this news probably while we're still live here. I'm hoping he plays so Fred VanVleet can stay sneaky, but if he doesn't play, Fred VanVleet will probably end up being pretty chalky for good reason. He should be chalky now. Amen Thompson's a guy that shows up a lot. Great matchup. Really cheap. He's been in great form. Jalen Green hasn't been as great recently, but I like his price tag. So if he does play, I have a like on him to tell the Domination Station to make sure he shows up a bit more. If you're wondering what the Domination Station is, click the link in the description. That's DFS Army's optimizer. You can follow along, or you can create your own process and strategy. But it's a great tool. It's helped me win 6 figures multiple times. So I can recommend it from experience. So, yeah, I love the Rockets tonight. I have a 12% min on Alperen Şengün. Şengün's weird. He's in a great spot. He's just pricey, and he hasn't been the most consistent player here recently, but he makes a lot of sense. It's a game I like, and so I put a 12% min on him. You see what I did with Fred VanVleet, like on Jalen Green. Amen shows up a lot by himself. Everyone else is a value play. If y'all have any questions about them, we can look at them a little bit closer. But at the end of the day, Amen showing up for me as much of as like a core play worthy play. Jalen Green is showing up a shit ton. If he plays today, I will still be over the field on him. And then you see my Jalen Green, my Fred VanVleet exposure, my Şengün exposure. And then that's pretty much it for me when it comes to the Rockets. I like them though. Good spot. The Wizards are the opposite. The Rockets are a good defensive team. I can't pick on these guys, and I haven't been able to for a while, so it's not even a recent change. Let's see. Exactly. Brandon is on the wrong side. He hates joining me, and I hate it when he's not here or whenever we don't have anyone else here, to be honest, but especially Brandon because he's good to bounce things off of. Cedric said, I hate Fred VanVleet. I get it. I hate Fred VanVleet too. Actually, I'm kidding. I actually love Fred VanVleet. If I could buy a jersey, I would. He's another one of those players who've helped me win a lot of money over the years. So I got to put some respect on his name. But Fred VanVleet, He's low owned because everybody hates him. I will always take a shot on a guy like that. Yeah, Rodney, no love for Kuzma. Let me look a little bit closer at him, make sure I'm not missing anything. Because I will be the first to admit I have biases, but I am willing to look past them if it can make sense enough for me. So let's see, what are we looking at? We're looking at Washington Wizards. Brutal matchup. He did finally play 30-plus minutes against the Pelicans on the 5th. So minutes aren't really something that we're worried about. For me, it's just the matchup. Price isn't bad at 6K. It's just the Kuzma situation. It's just the price. It's the matchup that has me worried. But 6K dart throw on a guy who's finally seeing 6+ minutes or 30+ minutes. 12% ownership worries me a little bit too. Hey, Brandon likes him though. So that's honestly all you need to know, Rodney. Yeah, exactly, Thomas. Low owned Fred VanVleet is good. Chalky Fred VanVleet is bad. You can play 10%, 10, 15% Fred VanVleet, and if he fails you, you won't really notice. But if he crushes, you will be feeling really good about this slate. So I like the spot for him. But yeah, the Wizards, I'm not looking at any of these guys, not going to lie. The most viable is Kuzma, but I'm not looking at any of them. Let's see if they show up naturally and not have to ignore everything I said. Yeah, no. None of the Wizards are showing up. I have 3% Kyle Kuzma, but that's not enough to really be relevant at all. Few more games left. We have the Lakers going up against the Mavericks. Another game that I thought was going to be more interesting than it was from a DFS standpoint. But, it is what it is. Cam Reddish is doubtful. Nothing else really interesting or worth discussing here. Total is the second lowest on the slate. Spread's relatively close. I think you have to remember that the Mavericks don't really have any of their stars, and the Lakers just aren't really that great of a team. And so that's just something to keep in mind, or that I have to remind myself at least. And so even with that being said, I do still like the Lakers tonight. Oddly enough, Anthony Davis is stupid expensive at $10,500, but we have pretty solid value on this slate. And so I'm forcing some exposure to these studs to make sure they're showing up in my lines because we can't afford to do that today. And so I've been saying this for a while, but you can play bigs against the Mavericks. They play at a slow pace, but they play at a bit of a faster pace when Luka Doncic is out. But then also they don't have any defensive bigs, and Gafford is out, so the matchup's even softer going up against Lively, who doesn't know how to even spell defense. And so Anthony Davis is one of my favorite pay-up options on the slate. 20% min on him. Austin Reeves has just been stupid good. He's chalky. Everyone's looking at him. Ever since the trades that have happened, he's only improved. His ceiling has only increased. So I have a 30% min on him just to make sure he shows up in my lines. He's just a play that makes sense for me on this slate as well. And then outside of that, I'm just letting the DS do everything else. So I have a 30% min on Austin Reeves. You see him showing up as one of the top 10 highest owned players I have exposure to. You see the 20% exposure to Anthony Davis. And then that's pretty much it. I'm calling it a day from there. Let's see. What are people saying? Thomas, I like Austin Reeves today. I really do. Think he's a very solid 7,300 play. Helps with like those mid-range balance builds. All right, next up we have the Mavericks going up against the Lakers. And then this is the team that's still missing Luka, still missing Kyrie, that's missing Gafford. Let's see, who else am I missing? We have Lakers out. We have Dallas. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Exum doesn't really count anymore. And so with all of these guys out, even still, I didn't love the price tags on these players, which surprised me a little bit. But also the matchup against the Lakers is just pretty neutral to bad these days. They play at a slow pace, just not exciting. But with all that being said, there are still plays that we can get somewhat excited about on this slate. Derek Lively, finally sees the minutes he deserves at 5,100. His minutes floor is a bit more consistent with Gafford out. And Najee Marshall has just been solid here recently. He also has had a little bit more of a safer role with Gafford out, seeing closer to 30, 33 minutes at 4,600 in a pretty neutral matchup. You can take a shot on a guy like that. I trust Lively significantly more than Marshall, just transparently. I know Lively has 40 plus upside. Let me look a little bit closer at Marshall. I know he's done it for us before too, but there's just a little bit lower of a ceiling. It makes me a little bit more nervous, but 30 plus minutes at 4,600 in a not awful matchup. Had 30 plus points against Memphis the other day. I can live with it, but I am a little bit more nervous about that play. So we have a shit ton of Najee Marshall. We have a lot of Derek Lively. And then that's pretty much all you see from me for the Mavericks. You could talk me into Dinwiddie taking a shot there. I know he burned a lot of people. Grimes isn't awful either, but I didn't get there. There's just other guys I like a lot more, primarily from like that Jazz game. All right, next up we have the Minnesota Timberwolves going up against New Orleans Pelicans. I like the Timberwolves tonight. It feels gross. It feels a little weird, but I still do. This is another one of those spots that it takes a little bit of time for my brain to get over them not being a stout defensive team. But when I think of the Pelicans, I'm like, don't play guys against the Pelicans. They're not good, or they're a good defense. Well, they've been struggling this season. They're a team that we can actually maybe start to look to target. I know Zion's coming back today, so that's interesting. But I like the spot of the Timberwolves tonight. And so Anthony Edwards is someone who looks like he's starting to come back into form. It's starting to show a little bit of that upside he showed last season. So I like being over the field on him, again, in a softer matchup than it has been historically. Julius Randle is another guy who looks like he's starting to turn it around a little bit. Still below 8K, so I'm open to taking a shot there. Not going crazy on these guys. I'm not getting a ton of leverage here because I am still nervous about going over the field, but just because they are so inconsistent and they can ruin a lineup real fast and in a hurry. But I still like having exposure to guys that I believe can be explosive on a slate like this. So 5% min on Randall, 20% min on Rudy. Rudy at 5,500. I know he's been bad, but 5,500 bad, 40, 50 plus upside at 5,500. Not the most consistent upside. I know he's burned a lot of people this season. I don't believe he's burned me too much this year because I haven't really played him. But again, the Pelicans aren't a great defensive team. This is a good matchup, good spot. I just actually like Rudy today at this price tag. And then I didn't have to do anything to these guys in the domination station, but DiVincenzo, he shows up by himself. Naz Reid is one of the value options I like most on this slate. And then I don't know if Jaden is showing up. Let's look. So yeah, Naz Reid is showing up a ton. He, like I said, one of the value options I like the most on this slate. I'm okay with him showing up as much as he is. He is still a value option, still a value play. There's risk that's involved with that, but he's the one I feel the most comfortable with. And then you see Anthony Edwards at 30%. And then you see DiVincenzo showing up around 29%, right around field weight. I don't trust him. They have been trying to utilize him a bit more. Mike Conley's minutes are falling more and more by the day, by the hour. They're realizing that, he just isn't the most consistent player, but these days. And so they're trying to give him a bit more run, but DiVincenzo isn't the most consistent player. So a lot of things they're trying to work and figure out, but I still like having and being around field weight exposure to the guy that they're trying to give more run to. So hopefully DiVincenzo will come through for us tonight. And then there's Rudy, and then there's Julius, and then McDaniels is showing up in about 4% of my lines. And that's about it. Let's see. Thomas, I don't know. I didn't look at yesterday's slate, to be honest with you. B-Dubs said Jarrett Butler may be chalky with the Poole news. Okay, we might need to go back and look at that with Poole being out. Can we trust Westbrook? Not on this slate for me, Jason, but you can trust what you've seen over the last few days and weeks. I think his role is consistent. Jason said, I like Michael Porter Jr. He's a Boston killer. I like Durant. I like Kessler. I'm with you on Kessler. I'm with you on Durant. I forced some exposure to him too. He was just the guy I chose from that team in a soft matchup. Rozier, I didn't get to as much, but not bad. William said, what's up, everyone? Need a better night tonight than last night. Shit show. I didn't play yesterday, but hopefully agreed. Let's make it a better one. Charles said the only negative I have against the Army is that I'm getting another 1099 this year. Yeah, that's been one of the pains in my side for a while now, but we'll save that for a conversation for another day. And then, James, I saw your question. We'll get to that a bit later at the end of the show, all right? So next up, like I said, I like the Timberwolves. The Pelicans. They're getting healthier. Like I said, Zion should be coming back. DeJounte Murray is still questionable. We haven't gotten that news just yet. If he gets ruled out, there could be some news and players that are more interesting or viable. But for now, I'm not looking at these guys. I don't play guys against the Timberwolves just as a rule of thumb unless there's a ton of injuries or something makes sense for me that is outside of the normal, which I haven't seen here today. And so I'm not going there. Brandon Boston showing up in about 3% of my lines. Not enough to make me X him out or anything like that. And yeah, these guys aren't showing up at all for me, and I'm fine with that. Okay, now things get a little bit more interesting going up. We have the Hawks going up against the Jazz. For the Hawks, let's see. I know Jalen Johnson's out. Larry Nance, Cody Zeller, Kobe Buffkin. The only thing that really matters here is Jalen Johnson being ruled out. We know that we saw he was out literally in the last game against the Clippers. We, at the forward position, that's a boost to guys like Hunter. That's a boost to guys like Matthews in theory. When it comes to like actual usage rates, Dyson Daniels sees a 2.8% increase in usage. Bogdan Bogdanovic sees a 1.9% increase in usage. David Roddy has a 1.3% increase in usage. And it's actually Keaton Wallace who sees the highest increase in usage at around 8%. But he typically doesn't see too much run, so I wouldn't hyper fixate on that too much. So because Dyson Daniels is, for all intensive purposes, the guy who really sees the highest increase in usage, I just put a 2% min on him. He's expensive. He's pricey at 7,400, but a great matchup against the Jazz. So 2% min there. Hunter, 2% min on him because, like I said, it just makes the most sense. He should see the highest increase in performance here with Johnson out. 6% min on Capella just because it's a good spot, good matchup, and I like him slightly more than Okongwu, even though Okongwu is showing up naturally. So it's just kind of both sides getting exposure there. And then Risa Shea, I also want to force a little bit of exposure to. He doesn't technically see an increase in usage or anything like that, but you can just tell when Johnson's out, this team is looking for someone to take on a bit more of a aggressive role from an offensive perspective, and Risa Shea fits that mold, and so I just want to have a little bit more exposure to him. But that's not as data driven as guys like Daniels or stuff like that, but I like it. So 5% men there. And then when Trae Young, fantastic spot, 9,700, highest total game on the slate. Like I always say, this is a spot I'm looking to find reasons to play guys from, and I'm trying to force exposure to guys in this game. And yeah, that's why I put a 30% min on Trae. And that's also half of the reasoning for why I put men's on these guys. And so we see Trae showing up in about 30% of my lines. And then, like I told you, Okongwu showing up in about 12% of my lines naturally. And then we see like Vit, showing up in about 7%, Capella in about 6%, Risache in about 5%, and I forced that. Garrison Matthews in 3%. Again, these guys showing up a little bit are fine. They're just lineup fillers. I'm not going to X these out unless they're really, really gross. Dyson Daniels is showing up a little bit. DeAndre Hunter as well. All viable, and I understand the thought process behind why the DS would put those guys in my lines. And so, like I said, as long as it makes sense to me, I'm not going to overthink that. JM, Harrington minutes, blowout proof with pull out. I'll look at that situation a little bit closer towards the end. Andrew said, Alex said, what do you think about Gobert against the Pelicans? I love it. I like it a lot, Alex, to be honest. Dixon, it's okay, but it's good to see you, man. Appreciate it. No locks yet. No locks yet. I do really like Rudy Gobert, though, which I know you will probably hate. All right. So, yeah, I really like the Hawks, just like everyone and their mom does today. For the Jazz, we have some pretty big news that makes this team a little bit harder to figure out. Lauri Markkanen is questionable. This entire team is in a fantastic spot today, but if Markkanen gets ruled out, they're almost must plays. And so just not having that news yet makes things a little bit tough because if Markkanen plays, he is also a fantastic play, of course, because it's a great matchup and it's the highest total game on the slate. So the news will dictate what I do here a lot, but this is what we have currently. Like I said, Lauri Markkanen showing up around 32%, Colin Sexton showing up in almost every line at 6K against the Hawks, who I love picking on with guards in general. He's looking like one of the highest owned players on the slate. Spot for me, I'm either going to eat the chalk or fade it. In this spot, I'm just going to eat it. Markkanen, we're over the field on. Kessler, I like a lot. He's one of my favorite plays if Markkanen plays or not. So I'm going to put a 20% min on Kessler to make sure he shows up a bit more for me. And then if the Kessler news happens, that will only increase. But at least I have a solid floor of exposure to him in either situation. And then Isaiah Collier, I like a good bit too. He's only showing up in 5% of my lines right now, though. So I don't know. These guys aren't showing up as much as I would like, but I'm really just putting a lot of that on how much exposure I have currently to Lauri Markkanen, right around 32%, and how much exposure I have to Sexton. So if Markkanen gets ruled out, that will just dramatically, and if Markkanen gets ruled out and Bryce plays, I'll have a crap ton of Bryce and a crap ton of Johnny and some of the other options we'll definitely talk about in the Discord. If we don't get the news, then I'll just keep it the way it is. I appreciate it, Dixon. If you all could hit the like button, that'd be awesome. Appreciate it always. And yes, you heard that. I like Rudy Gobert. I won't sing it to the world because that's embarrassing to admit, but I know it's tough out there. It's tough out there. All right. Next up, we have the Celtics going up against the Nuggets. Celtics, when it comes to injury news today, we have Derek White listed as questionable. If he's another one of those illness guys. If he gets ruled out, that's a boost to Pritchard. That's a boost to Hauser. That's a boost to the rest of the starters as well. They see a soft boost to usage. This is the game I like. It's the second highest total game on the slate. Close spread, 6 points. And no one's playing them. Not really. I mean, besides some of the obvious plays. The tough thing here is just, the matchup against the Nuggets isn't what it used to be. It's actually a pretty soft matchup. But the matchup against the Celtics is tough. And so the Celtics are a team you want to have exposure to today because of what I mentioned. Matchup against the Nuggets is soft these days. So Tatum, for me, doesn't grade out quite as well as guys like Jaylen Brown, Derek White, Porzingis. But Tatum's just been that guy this season. He has been the one who has 60, 70-point upside on almost any night. And so just because of that factor on a 7-game slate, I'm going to force exposure to that guy. And so I'll put a 20% min on him. I like this game. I like this spot for Jaylen Brown, so I'm going to put a 5% min on him. Porzingis, I can live without, to be honest. I like other bigs on the slate a bit more, but he's a viable play. Derek White's good too, both him being questionable and there just being other cheaper guards like Sexton that I like a bit more, a lot more. I'm not going to force that as much. All right, so we have the men on Tatum and Brown, and moving on. Next up, we have Nuggets going up against the Celtics. And for the Nuggets, I can't really look at these guys, to be honest. The matchup is just so brutal. Boston, they shut down everybody. Jamal Murray, Westbrook, Michael Porter Jr., they're all in that 6-7K range. Matchup's pretty neutral. Like, Boston's ranked 17th in points to guards, combo guards like Murray and Westbrook. That's not shut down, but it's, again, not something I'm excited about when there's cheaper guards on the slate. They're ranked 15th and against forwards like MPJ. Again, that's not a shutdown performance by any means, but just hard for me to get overly excited about it. So the only guy I don't care about matchups with are guys like Nikola Jokic. And just because we have value on this slate in the last few games we've touched on, that's why I'm going to force exposure to him. I have a 10% min on Jokic just because of that. I don't feel like you need to get to Jamal Murray on this slate at 7,700. He's just pricey, or any of the other guys. So Jokic is really the only guy I forced exposure to. 10%, you see him showing up right there. And then that's pretty much it for Denver for me. All right, last game. We have the Heat going up against the Warriors. The Heat, of course, Jimmy Butler is still suspended for all the drama that's going on in there. When it comes to injury news, though, let's see. Nothing worth really discussing. Let me refresh and just make sure I didn't miss anything new that came through. Oh, Tyler Hero. Yep, there we go. Being questionable is huge. Yeah, Tyler Hero being questionable is gigantic. And yeah, I see now we have that Jordan Poole news come through. Denny Avdia, that's tomorrow. Bilal's available. Okay. But yeah, Tyler Hero being questionable is actually a gigantic deal. Of course, if he gets ruled out, then Rozier becomes another fantastic guard play on this slate. And so, who was that? I think it was Jason. Yeah, it was Jason who mentioned Rozier earlier. If Hero's not playing, then yeah, it's just a lock and load situation where he's by far one of the better value options on the slate. Better than Sexton too, just because of price. And matchup's not brutal against Golden State, but they're not a pushover either. That was a ramble, but yeah. I like Terry in that spot. Wow. I missed that one earlier. I really like this spot for Bam, though. Either way, he's a much better play if Tyler Hero gets ruled out. I'll probably boost this to about 10% in that case, just because of the increase in usage he would see. But the matchup against the Warriors is soft when it comes to their front court these days. And so I like taking some shots against them. And then we'll have to worry about the Terry news when we get that. And that's about it for the Heat for me. Jaime showing up a little bit, and then Terry will show up more if Hero gets ruled out. Let's see. Drew Holiday, I see you, Don Juan. I didn't get there, but I get it. Y'all aren't wrong. He's been shooting threes like crazy, but yeah, I still didn't get there. If Jokic is ruled out, I don't. Is Jokic gonna miss? Yeah, I assumed he was gonna play, but maybe I missed something. I'll take a look at it. Rozier or Holiday. Is Rozier if Hero's ruled out? Holiday has a higher floor if Hero does play. Try a chance that White is out, and now it's the same situation with Rozier, almost the same price. Yep. Okay. Thank you, Jason, for calling that out. Did I miss the White news too? Holy shit. NBA, things are just moving all the time. Sometimes I think I have all of the injury news memorized, and then by the time we're live, I'm realizing we're missing things. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Derek White's missing, and I know I mentioned Pritchard, or he's questionable. He might miss. I know I mentioned Pritchard and Hauser, but you're right. Drew's right there with them. So, no, it's a good call up. All right. So we touched on the Heat. I like Rozier if Hero's out, and then I like Bam. And then for the Warriors tonight, no one's like top. I have to play these guys. Again, low total, never a situation I'm trying to force too much exposure to. And then matchup against the Heat still isn't exciting, even with some of the guys that they're missing. Some of these guys do show up a bit naturally because of some of the guys that they're missing, like Kuminga being out, Podziemski being out. That's the boost to the guys that you've been playing the last few days, like Trace to Wiggins to Green, Kyle Anderson, Heald, Moody, all these, gross names you hate clicking on. But today on this slate, I don't feel like it's necessary in this matchup. So I didn't do anything to any of them in the DS, and none of them are showing up outside of a little bit of Andrew Wiggins, a little bit of Draymond Green, a little bit of Buddy Hield, a little bit of Kyle Anderson, but I'm still going to be under the field on pretty much all these guys. And Trace just isn't the value play he was for us for a few weeks. He's not bad at 5,200, viable play. He just doesn't have the minutes solidified that I would like to see at his price tag at this point. And so let me rerun, and then we'll touch on the Wizards situation and some of these other situations that we didn't talk a lot about. All right. Yeah, Jalen Green is available. Love that. That is what I wanted to see. It makes my Fred VanVleet play so much sneakier, which, I mean, I'm not going to lie. It does make me a little bit more nervous because it's real now. But, yeah, I still love Fred VanVleet, and I like Jalen Green. I have a ton of Jalen Green tonight, and both of them in the same line is fine, but I wouldn't go out of my way to force that. Yeah, the Jokic Q tag is where I'm now just like, you know what? I'm just going to take everything as we get it and, just play it by ear. You can't plan for too much. Jokic being questionable, though, is huge. It is gigantic. If Jokic is out, which at this point, I feel like we kind of have to assume he's out. First, it makes, I'm going to take this min off of Tatum with that news because first of all, I never like playing Tatum that much, to be honest with you guys. It's always like pulling teeth for me. But then outside of that, I don't see this game staying close in a world where Jokic isn't playing. And then I'm going to keep the 5% min on Brown because I think at 8,500 he can still get there. But I'm not going to do a 20% on Tatum. I'd rather just fade that. And then, of course, for the Nuggets, assuming the game does stay close, you're going to have to take shots on guys like Murray, and Westbrook is huge tonight. You don't want to forget about him. Michael Porter Jr. would become much more viable. Brown becomes a better play as well at 4,700. We've seen them use him a bit more as well. Strother's another player than DeAndre Jordan, obviously, at 3,100 is as close to a smash as you can get. I don't really know how else they use the rest of these players in this spot with Gordon and Jokic out, but I'll trust the projection on that piece. I just know the guys I'm looking to prioritize. Damn, man. You think you know where you're at with a slate, and then you get a Jokic Q tag. Freaking insane. Murphy is out. Yep. And then let's say if Markkinen is out, who do we pivot to on FanDuel? Also, is Plumlee is starting for the Suns. Bigs against the Hornets. I'm not going to get too cute with it on this slate. I don't think it's a crazy dart throw. It is a dart throw play, but I'm not going to go crazy with it. Just because he typically still doesn't see much run even when he does play because Nurkic is still coming off the bench, so they're splitting. So it's kind of a weird situation where they're both a little too expensive for the role they're playing, but they're also cheap enough where they can still have a little upside if they're really efficient. I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth there, but I'm not playing them, to be honest. Harlock, yeah, white out officially. Thanks, guys. Yeah, so that whole game is just going freaking nuts. I am going to give the DS probably like 10, 15 minutes to update the situation itself. So, like I said, I do want a little bit more Peyton Pritchard at 5,900. His minutes floor goes up a good bit. Drew Holiday at 5,200 is a steal at this price point. He'll be borderline close to a core play, fighting it out with Sexton as well. Like I said, guys, a lot of really good guard plays on this slate at this point. We have Holiday, we have Sexton, we have someone else I mentioned too. But there's just a lot of really good viable guard plays on this slate, and so that's part of why I'm not forcing in as many stud guards on this slate either, because I like the value we're getting. All right. Y'all, I do have to jump and start fixing my own lines just to kind of clean things up a little bit and make sure everyone's showing up that I want to see. And then also just make sure I'm getting the leverage I want in a few spots. I do really just kind of go through these exposures and just make sure everything's, landing the way I want it to. So I need to do that, but I will be around. If anyone has questions or needs anything, feel free to reach out in the Discord. Happy to answer any questions there. And of course, if you're wondering how to get access to the Discord, link is in the description. Feel free to use promo code BOB for a 10% discount. But I will not see you all tomorrow. That's another in-office day. But I will see you all on Thursday for us to celebrate today's wins and then also to talk through that slate. So see y'all. Peace out.